Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that one of the world's most important oil routes has almost completely stopped. No ships, no normal flow of tankers, and no clear answer about when it will reopen. This is not a fictional scenario. In August 2026, shipping traffic through the Strait of Hormuz has fallen dramatically amid escalating conflict, with Reuters reporting that transit had nearly ground to a standstill after further attacks on ships. But why should a narrow stretch of water between Iran and Oman matter to someone thousands of miles away? Because what happens in Hormuz does not stay in Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz connects the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman and the Arabian Sea. At its narrowest point, the waterway is only about 21 miles wide, yet it sits at the center of one of the world's most important energy routes. In the first half of 2025, around 20.9 million barrels of oil per day moved through the strait. That was roughly 1/5 of global petroleum liquids consumption and about 1/4 of global maritime oil trade. Now imagine that route staying closed. The first impact would be on ships. Thousands of vessels do not simply disappear when a major maritime route becomes dangerous. They wait, turn around, anchor outside the danger zone, or search for alternative routes. And alternatives are limited. Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Iran have pipelines that can bypass part of the Strait of Hormuz, but their combined capacity is only a fraction of the oil normally moving through the waterway. The EIA estimates that Saudi and UAE pipelines together provide about 4.7 million barrels of oil per day of bypass capacity. That leaves a huge gap. And that gap is where the global economy begins to feel the pressure. Oil is not just something that goes into a car. It powers trucks, ships, factories, airplanes, agricultural machinery, and countless industries that depend on transportation and energy. When the supply of oil becomes uncertain, markets react before the physical shortage even arrives. That is exactly what has been happening. On August 14th, Brent crude rose to around $88.52 per barrel, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate reached about $82.40, with renewed tanker attacks and uncertainty surrounding the conflict pushing prices higher. But the real danger is not simply a higher price for crude oil. It is what happens if the disruption lasts. Think about a tanker carrying oil toward Asia. If it cannot safely pass through Hormuz, its cargo may need to come from somewhere else. And that's already changing buying patterns. On August 14th, Reuters reported that at least 4 Asian refineries had purchased U.S. crude as they searched for alternative supplies while Hormuz remained effectively closed. That means the crisis can reshape trade routes thousands of miles away. A refinery in Asia changes suppliers. A tanker changes direction. A shipping company changes its route. An insurance company increases its risk calculations. And suddenly, a geopolitical crisis begins influencing decisions across the global energy system. But there's another problem: natural gas. Around 1/5 of global liquefied natural gas also passed through the Strait of Hormuz in 2024, much of it originating from Qatar. So a prolonged disruption would not only threaten oil markets, it could also put pressure on gas supplies and energy prices in regions that depend heavily on imported fuel. And this is where the situation becomes much more serious. The longer ships stay away from Hormuz, the more expensive the entire system becomes. Longer routes mean more fuel, more time at sea, higher insurance costs, more expensive freight, and greater uncertainty for companies trying to plan months ahead. Some businesses can absorb those costs. Others eventually pass them on to consumers. That's how a geopolitical crisis can move from a map on television to a price tag in an ordinary store. But what if Hormuz stayed closed for weeks? The world would start adapting. Countries would search for alternative oil supplies. Producers outside the region could become more important. Strategic reserves could be used. pipelines would become more valuable, and shipping companies would redesign routes around the crisis. We're already seeing signs of that adjustment. India's major refineries have been seeking additional crude supplies, and even requesting cargoes that avoid both the Red Sea and the Strait of Hormuz. But adaptation has limits. You can't instantly replace millions of barrels of daily energy flows. You can't build a new ocean route overnight, and you can't simply move a massive volume of oil through a pipeline that doesn't have enough capacity. That's why time matters. A short disruption could create a sharp shock. A prolonged disruption could change global trade patterns, and even a longer closure could force governments and companies to rethink how dependent they are on a single maritime choke point. The most surprising part is that Hormuz doesn't need to remain physically blocked to create this effect. If ship owners believe the route is too dangerous, they may avoid it. If insurance becomes unavailable or extremely expensive, ships may stay away. And if governments begin imposing blockades or restrictions, normal commercial traffic can collapse even without a physical wall across the water. That's why the Strait of Hormuz is more than a line on a map. It's a pressure point in the global economy. And right now, that pressure point is being tested. The world can find alternative sources. It can reroute ships. It can use pipelines. It can release reserves. But none of those solutions can instantly replace the scale and efficiency of the normal route. So the biggest question is not simply whether Hormuz is closed today, it's how long the world can operate without it. Because if this narrow waterway remains disrupted long enough, the real story will no longer be about ships trapped in the Middle East. It will be about how one small point on the map can change the price of energy, reshape global trade, and reach almost every economy on Earth. If you enjoyed this documentary, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Do you want line-by-line cinematic video prompts for this?